Good morning, I'm Taylor Wilson, and today is Wednesday, December 25th, Christmas Day 2024. This is the Excerpt. Today, Biden has enacted an anti-hazing law, plus another lawsuit against Diddy, and we hear from some of the voices behind your favorite toy. President Joe Biden yesterday enacted the first federal anti-hazing law, marking the end of a years-long push by victims' families for more transparency and accountability on college campuses. The Stop Campus Hazing Act, which passed the House in September and the Senate this month, requires universities to start collecting hazing statistics to include in regular public reports. These requirements could kick in as soon as next week and impact many campus groups. Under longstanding federal statutes, colleges and universities must disclose crimes that occur on their campuses each year. And still, amid the sometimes violent and even fatal outcomes of hazing, schools have never been required by the federal government to disclose statistics about how often it happens, especially within fraternities and sororities that target their new members. While nearly every state has an anti-hazing law, the measures vary in scope and impact, according to the advocacy group Stop Hazing. Sean Diddy Combs has been sued again. The embattled music mogul, who is awaiting a trial next year for federal sex crimes, was sued Monday, this time by a former male employee, Philip Pines, who is accusing Diddy of sexual battery, according to TMZ and Variety. According to the suit obtained by the outlets, Pines claims Diddy treated him as a personal lackey during his employment for the Bad Boy Records founder, which lasted from 2019 to 2021. Part of the alleged responsibilities included setting up rooms for sex parties that Combs referred to as Wild King Nights. It also claims Diddy pressured him to have sex with a female guest of the rapper, detailing an incident in which Diddy told him to have sex with the unnamed woman. Pine stated that he complied briefly but stopped and left the room upset. Combs' representative said in a statement to USA Today about the latest suit, quote, "No matter how many lawsuits are filed, it won't change the fact that Mr. Combs has never sexually assaulted or sex trafficked anyone, man or woman, adult or minor. We live in a world where anyone can file a lawsuit for any reason. Fortunately, a fair and impartial judicial process exists to find the truth, and Mr. Combs is confident he will prevail in court," unquote. You can read more with a link in today's show notes. Maybe your kid is waking up this morning to a new train set from Santa, or you already have a model train set up around the tree. So how did model trains and Christmas come to be tied together? I spoke with USA Today graphics editor George Patris to learn more about this century-old tradition. George, thanks for hopping on today.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah, George, let's just start with this. What's the origin story here? How did model trains become popular in the U.S.?
No one really knows precisely when the custom started, but it's been a part of the U.S. culture since the early 1900s, and it's been passed down from one generation to the next. What I was told I spoke with a couple of editors of modern railroad magazines, that it was part of the American consciousness, way back then, because if you wanted to travel long distances, you had to do it by train. The connection between, say, trains and Christmas time, since trains were the primary method of travel, trains also brought in everything from, the relatives that were coming to see you from out of town, plus all the presents that you were getting, at home at Christmas time. So there's a very strong connection between the trains and what they brought to you.
Interesting. So how did we see it change? You mentioned the early kind of 20th century. How did we see it change throughout, I guess, the last 100 years?
It was just part of Christmas because, there was that strong connection between the trains and the travel and Christmas time. And, they started putting rudimentary toy trains around the tree. We're talking like things made out of wooden blocks practically, and some of them were pulled by, strings or small pieces of rope or something like that. It got more involved. Model train manufacturers started to make more elaborate sets. Then they were, run by electricity, and then it sort of took off. I think the heyday was probably like in the 1950s and 1960s, because that's when the model Lionel train makers and so on really brought out a lot of fascinating, detailed equipment that you could put down, and that really sparked people's imagination.
All right, George. So fast forward to today in the 2020s. Does this tradition still endure around Christmas time? How big is the model railroad hobbyist community in general stateside? Just where do things stand these days?
As you might imagine, it's not as popular as it was in the 1950s and 60s, but it staged a bit of a comeback with the COVID pandemic, and people were staying at home and they were working on their hobbies and so on. And, probably a lot of people remembered when they were kids and they had that model train set around the Christmas tree. They would, start buying new sets and setting them up at home. Model railroad clubs started seeing a new influx of fans, and it's sort of built up by then. It's gone. So to sum up, it was dropped a lot since the 50s, but it's come back a little bit.
And have you spoken with any enthusiasts who are still involved in this community today? I mean, what do they have to say?
Oh yeah, they love their hobby, of course, and they're always looking for new members. And it may be more of a generational thing. You might see like older folks, senior citizens be more enthusiastic, but younger people are starting to discover this too. The thing of building something with your hands and the artistry of setting up like a train set and a train village and so on, that does appeal to some people.
For folks who are listening here, George, whose interest might be piqued by this story, how can they get involved? Maybe it's too late to get involved this Christmas time, but just in general with this hobby.
You can do it at any point. I would say the best thing to do would be to check in your area to see if there's a model railroad club there. Very likely there very well may be. And they would be the people that I've spoken with at various model clubs. They are very welcoming. They're willing to share their knowledge, and they really like to talk to new members. And that would be a very good way, I think, to break into it. If there's no club in your area, you can just sort of branch out on your own, buy your own train set. There are magazines out there that are devoted to the hobby that could give you some good guidance.
George Petras is a graphics editor with USA Today. I love this story. I want the listeners to go check out the full version with a link in today's show notes. Thank you, George, and Merry Christmas.
Thank you so much.
Today is both Christmas Day and the start to Hanukkah, and that's a rarity. A Chrismica, as rare as this one, occurs due to the Hebrew calendar not aligning with the Gregorian calendar, causing the start of the Hanukkah holiday to move dates annually. The holidays have occurred on the same day 4 times since 1900, according to Hebcal, a website that tracks Jewish holidays and the Hebrew calendar. Your favorite holiday toy has a voice. Who's behind the magic? And what's next amid the rise in AI? I chatted with USA Today money reporter Bailey Schultz for more. Hello, Bailey.
Hi, yeah, thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming on today, Bailey. So I have to admit, I loved this story. Let's start with this. Who are some of the folks you spoke with for this piece, and what's their experience in the industry?
Yeah, so I had a lot of fun with this one because it was a very, I got hit with a lot of nostalgia as I was working on this story where I was talking to voices behind toys like Leapfrog, different Furby toys, toddler educational toys, even like Shrek movie themed toys. And so, yeah, talked to a number of talent behind some of these bigger brands in the toy space.
And what did you hear from them and just kind of what their careers have looked like?
What I heard over and over again is that people who are in the space just love their work, love this job, where whether that's, like I said, working with like a Shrek the movie themed toy and you're in a sound booth making burping and fart noises and getting paid to do that, or you're working with maybe more educational toy or a toy aimed for babies, toddlers, and you're working on this audio with this toy that's supposed to help these kids learn things like colors or learn how to read. And I just heard over and over again that they thought that this has been a very fun, rewarding job.
Well, speaking of the fun and just kind of the energy that these voice actors bring to this job, I want the listeners to get a peek of what this all sounds like.
Let's play. Let's play.
So in comes AI. What's the future of voice acting look like as a whole, Bailey? And especially as it pertains to voicing kids' toys. Are we already seeing a shift?
There's differing opinions out there on exactly what sort of changes we'll see with AI, but it's definitely something that's top of mind for many voice actors. We've seen some strikes recently kind of pushing for more worker protections. As far as what we're seeing in the toy space, what I was told is that these voice actors aren't seeing much yet as far as AI taking over jobs voicing for toys, but a lot of people do think that's coming. And so there's a difference in opinion on exactly how big of a slice AI will take, whether it's just taking over some of those maybe cheaper toy brands or when these larger companies keep working with human voice actors while others say it's going to take over entirely. So I reached out to a number of toy companies for the story. Didn't hear back from all of them, but someone at Leapfrog, which is a company that makes these educational toys, mentioned that AI isn't something that's been implemented in products yet, but as the technology keeps growing, keeps improving, he told me that he could see AI becoming an industry standard within a few years.
Well, it's possible we'll see some kind of hybrid model, right, Bailey, where some toys have AI, some have humans, or some mix as well. What can humans in this space do functionally that AI cannot?
Yeah, you're right. Where that Leapfrog dialogue director told me that he could see either companies adopting a hybrid model that utilizes both real voices and AI. Others have said they kind of expect maybe to see these sort of less expensive toys turn to AI first. But what I heard over and over again from voice actors is that they don't think that AI can do the job that they're doing, where maybe with some of those more dry dialogues, or if you're reading a jargon-filled technical scripts, those sort of things, I was told when they get why that would go to AI. But as far as these sort of more emotional roles or things like even with toy companies where you have to be very animated and then put a lot of energy into these sort of roles, they told me that they do not think that AI can sort of live up to what humans are doing at this point.
All right, this was a great piece. Listeners can go check out the full version with the link in today's show notes. Bailey Schultz covers money for USA Today. Thank you, Bailey.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to The Excerpt. I hope you have a great holiday, however you're celebrating. I'm Taylor Wilson, and I'll be back tomorrow with more of The Excerpt from USA Today.